Welcome to the Mission Manhood podcast, where mature masculinity is celebrated and encouraged. My name is Angela Abide, and I will be your host. Every week or so, I sit down with a man who is in the men's movement, helping men grow and thrive in their masculinity, someone who is exhibiting characteristics of mature masculinity, or someone who has a perspective that might be beneficial for those who are seeking to grow and develop in that area. As a woman, I have a unique perspective as a mother and a therapist, and I hope to contribute to the conversation in those ways. Thank you so much for joining, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Hey, I'm glad you're here. I'm sorry about my voice. I have a bit of a cold. On today's episode, my guest is Robert Althius. He wrote the book Never Enoughitis, which tells the story of his worldly success and then losing everything, a lot of things that were important to him, and a story of redemption and rising from the ashes. I hope that you enjoy this conversation, and as of April 17th, the book will be available in audio form, and I hope that you'll check that out as well. Thank you so much for joining. Hello, Robert.
Hi, Angela. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here today. I actually met you, I think, through Trevor Boehm's podcast. Yeah. I heard your episode there, and I really liked it and checked out your work and just thought you might be a good fit for my audience as well. So thanks for being here.
Oh, that's perfect. I was serving with Trevor here in Costa Rica 2 days ago. I'm going to meet him tonight for dinner. So he's a good friend. He's a good man too. He does
tell him I said hi.
I will. Okay.
From what I've seen and just getting into your work a little bit and what I love about you guys is you have this great respect for the sacred feminine. And that's really, I believe, what we need in the world today in order for us to overcome some of our problems. So it's great to see men standing up and taking leadership to be that sacred king, but also to understand that we need the sacred queen as well. Men can't do it by themselves. So
yeah.
Tell me a little bit about, you wrote a book called Never Enoughitis. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, happy to. So the book was really, it started as therapy. My background, just in a nutshell, I mean, I was what we call very successful in this world, right? I went to Columbia Business School. I was a top executive at GE. Then I did a buyout in the financial crisis. And I developed airports around the world, working with pension funds and private equity firms and all that stuff. And all that stuff sounds really fancy, and the world loves that. But really, in the process, I kind of corrupted my soul in many different ways. I got totally caught up in this game of money and greed and prestige and status and accolades. And I wasn't that good of a husband. I cheated on my wife. I thought I was the king of the world, but in a in a proverbial way, not the real way. And even in business, I did a lot of business in Latin America, a lot of unsavory stuff. But even with GE, I was involved with a lot of different things in different parts of the world, which can't really see the daylight. And we justify all these things because, we're just out here making money and we're selling and our business is growing and, we have KPIs and bonus pools we're worried about. And so in 2015, I sold most of my business in Latin America, which was kind of an arduous experience as well. And I got to this point where I was in my early 40s, I think I was 43. And, I had everything. I had set out to get. I had all the money, the toys, the houses, the cars, the so-called perfect family. And so there was nothing else to blame, but I was like, why do I feel so empty? Why do I feel so restless? And then really the second layer behind that was I really couldn't see myself in the mirror anymore. I just had no respect for what I had become as a man. And, that house of cards kind of fell apart for me. I call this now an awakening. At the time, I didn't really know what that meant. But that prompted me to go on this search for truth. And why do I feel like this? I started feeling more and more restless and more empty and more lonely. And I just went on this spiritual journey, just like I adventured into business. I'm a fire sign, so I went after it all the way. And, over the next couple of years, some things happened in my life. My business unraveled. I had a hurricane that wiped out a business. And, my marriage eventually wasn't something that we could continue. But we have a beautiful relationships now. And then it culminated in me going to therapy finally and then writing this book because my therapist told me to write. Yeah. And so I said, well, journaling isn't really my thing. What if I make it a book? And she said, I don't care how you write.
A project.
I just want you to write.
Yeah.
And so that became the project. And then when COVID happened, I had one chapter left, the last chapter. And I was like, I need to finish this. I need to get this out. If nothing else, it needs to come out of me. And that's when I committed to a publishing date with my publisher. And it came out last year.
It's really great. The thing I love about it is you're a great storyteller. And you told us the story of the fairy tale that we've all been taught is possible, the prince and the princess and,
Yep.
true love and all of that. And then, I'm almost sad reading it because I know where it's going. I want to believe that that's possible, right? And that's something that's wired in us. And so when it was starting to take a dive, you knew where the story was going.
Right.
And it's the same for so many people. We have to get to that point of like almost total delusionment before we're willing to even consider an ego death.
Right.
I think it's beautiful how you decided that you weren't going to just stay in that place of death and misery and just kind of ride out the rest of your life.
Right. What I really want people to take from my book, that yes, it was this fairy tale that fell apart, but I'm really grateful for everything that it was and everything that it taught me. And I have been able to transform, my relationship with my ex-wife. We go on vacations together. We spend all the holidays together. Our kids are in a great place. We help each other out whatever way we can. Now, the marriage dissolved. Too much had happened, and we had grown apart. And frankly, I wasn't the man anymore that she married. Mm-hmm. I changed, and she didn't change as much. It's just that my part of the equation changed, and so I got to own that. Now, this delusionment, I think everybody moves through it in their own way. And, it wasn't graceful. It wasn't pretty. It was really ugly. I'm this big 6'5" guy, but I had nights that I cried my eyes out in a fetus position on my bed, and I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to solve it. And eventually, I had a couple of watershed moments where, and one of them was actually, I lived in a very prestigious oceanfront community. I was still married at this time. It was 2016. And there was a guy a few streets down, beautiful house, was a third generation contractor family out of Miami, very prestigious, very high flying guy, very wealthy. And he, at 5:30 in the morning, he walked into the mangroves and he shut his brains out. Mm. And I remember in this, this prestigious neighborhood, everybody was like, saying like it's so selfish and it's this and it's that, and they were judging him, and he left his wife and his kids behind. And this, of course, is incredibly tragic. But I realized in that moment that I totally understood why he did it.
Yeah.
Now, I wasn't quite there at that point, but I wasn't that far off. I understood his pain, that it was so unbearable that he saw no other way out. And of course, that's a tragic thing. And I mentioned in my book, there is actually help, and nobody has to go to that extent. But I am now at a place where I can understand where people are in such despair, mm-hmm. where there just doesn't seem to be any light anymore. And in that moment, I remember the days afterwards, I went into my kids. I woke up, I couldn't sleep. And I went into my kids' room around 4 a.m. and at 5 a.m. in the morning. And I was looking at my kids, and they were sleeping. And I literally had this moment like, man, I got to fucking figure this out. I'm going to be that guy.
Yeah.
And not that there's anything judgmental.
But you didn't want to leave your children.
I just realized, like, I have a lot to live for. I got to figure this out. There's got to be a way out. And that was really a big watershed moment for me.
Yeah.
Maybe that was in some ways rock bottom. At least at that point forward, I was really rededicating myself to like, okay, I got to figure a way out. I got to get out of this. And this is also where I really started seeking outside help. Because we men don't ask for help, right? We're not taught to ask for help. We just suffer silently and alone.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of where I was getting at. What was different? What caused you to stop continuing to pursue the outer and then decide to go inner?
Well, it didn't work anymore. It didn't work anymore.
Yeah, it didn't work anymore.
I didn't get the happiness, joy, and peace and satisfaction from that. And I had basically accomplished everything I set out to do. And even in the 1 or 2 years after that, I kind of haphazardly tried it a little bit. I put pitch decks together. I went back to investors, and I would see 10 other decks on their desk, and I would be pitching it, but there was no passion in it. There was no energy in it. And my work product was still good. I just wasn't into it anymore.
You weren't into it, yeah.
I was like, I can't keep moving decimals on spreadsheets, and it didn't move me anymore. And I don't want to say anything that's wrong that anybody else does this. Mm-hmm. It just wasn't moving me anymore. Yeah. And I was like, it wasn't fulfilling me. Now that was a huge void. because that's all I had pursued for the last 20, 25
Right.
years,
Yeah.
right? I mean, my father was a successful businessman, a CEO. And, I kind of had this programming that for me to matter in the world, for me to be enough, I had to be successful.
Yeah.
And, predominantly in business. Financially successful was kind of the holy grail.
I think the great thing about it, you're very honest with the great times, and then you're very honest with the unraveling, and you allow people to see that part of your life and the compassion that comes through. You ended that first section with, hey, if you're at rock bottom, if you're experiencing this, there's hope for you. And then I loved how the whole next part of the book was just, here's what I've learned, and I'm not your guru. You might not even
Yeah.
agree with everything I say, but just the whole humility,
Yeah.
throughout the book, I
Well,
thought was very refreshing.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I do work with people now. I work with executives, CEOs, people that were like me back then that are going through this awakening. I call it the hero's journey. And, one of the things I learned in my journey of finding teachings and helpers is that it's a fundamental belief of mine that we are all our own guru and healer and sage and mystic. And, we should idolize teachings, but never the teacher. This is a fundamental belief that I have, because you disempower yourself whenever you put your faith into some healer, some mystic, some guru. I don't want to be anybody's guru. I can guide you along the way based on some of my experiences, but all I can really do is have you remember things and knowledge, on a spiritual level that's already inside you. Because we have all this knowledge inside us. We've just forgotten. It's been covered over by all this societal programming, religious beliefs, all this other stuff, which a lot of that is bullshit rules, or rules as I call them.
You're always going to be disappointed if you put your trust in a person. And I think about the teachers who've been so near and dear to me. And then you kind of get to the point where it's time to move on, and it's really hard to let go. But you've learned that, and you're not going to get to your next teacher until you leave. And I think if you get too attached to somebody, you're not willing to do that growth that you need to do.
Any form of idolizing is disempowering yourself.
Yeah.
And really, even the greats. I mean, there's people I follow. There's people I learn from, and I value their teachings incredibly. But when you go to kindergarten, you think your kindergarten teacher
knows everything.
Is a superhero. Right. She knows everything. It's incredible, right? And then when you go to your reunion 5 years later, you graduate from elementary school, and you meet that kindergarten teacher. You're kind of like, it's a little different perspective, right?
Right.
And so, whoever has some teachings to share, and there's many people that have beautiful teachings, learn the teachings. Take from it what's for you, right? Because not everybody's teachings is for you at this moment. I read a book by Krishnamurti in 2016, and he's a very advanced philosopher and thinker. And it didn't make any sense to me. I mean, I knew it was profound literature, but it didn't connect. I wasn't ready for it. I started reading it 2 years ago, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And so, sometimes you come across teachers also, maybe you're just not ready for it.
Yeah, you mentioned The Power of Now as one of your books that helped you at the beginning. And I had the same experience with that book. I picked it up and I just couldn't get into it. But then later, it was transformational for me. I guess I just wasn't ready the first time I picked it up.
And there's no hierarchy in that side, right? Because we always think in hierarchy, and that person is more enlightened than I am, or more spiritual. There's no such thing. That's all nonsense.
Well, they're all human. Everybody's human. And
we're all on the same path to just evolution and, getting closer or back to source, if you want to call it that way, and discovering these amazing creatures that we are, with this amazing potential and amazing capabilities that, we get to unleash as we peel back the onion, as we remove the veils of illusion, as they call it in yoga, yogic traditions. We get closer and closer to the full, powerful creator that we truly are.
I had an idea one time to write a book for people called something like an on-ramp to spiritual enlightenment.
Sure.
Or an on-ramp to enlightenment, because I feel like there's this super highway of people who've been there for a while, and they can't even relate to the people who are still so just totally into their ego. And I really do feel like you did a great job of that.
Yeah.
You go through just the basics of going from this kind of life to this kind of life, and the steps you took and the things that you discovered. So it's awesome for anybody who's just starting out on that journey. You shared so much of what you learned.
There's this misconception that when you become spiritual, you're somehow no longer of this world. That's
Yeah.
not my form of spirituality. We're here in an incarnation, or whatever you want to call it, in Earth School. We live in this 3D world where worldly success is a beautiful thing. We can have great careers and jobs and create abundance and have as much money as you want. There's nothing wrong with any of that. We just have to live it in balance and harmony with spiritual realization. How you operate in this world, and this is how you're successful. And it's very hard to be spiritual if you can't pay your rent. We don't have to sit on a mountaintop for 6 years and sing Om, and now we're spiritual. That has nothing to do with it. I know profoundly spiritual people that don't even know what spirituality means.
Right, I agree.
But I meet them in all walks of life. This has nothing to do with where you are in life or what you do. I mean, some people just have this organically, just have this understanding of life, and they live their way in very beautiful, profound ways. But the spiritual realization is really about the game spirit plays. And that has a different set of rules. When we can create balance and harmony between these two worlds, now we're really moving in this world in really profound ways. And we have such capacity to create the life we really, truly want. But it comes from that integration of those two worlds.
When I was younger, I was raised very religiously, and there were so many things that I felt like Christ was trying to say that we were doing a terrible job of communicating. And one of them was on earth as it is in heaven. What you just described to me now is my definition of that. It's that dance between the masculine and feminine within me and within my relationships and then in the greater world. And I love that you actually ended your book kind of like that. So
yeah, and to tell you the truth, I didn't grow up with any religion. I grew up in Holland, and post World War II, the religion was really on a downward slide, and my parents, for all intents and purposes, were almost atheists. I believe that Jesus Christ existed, and he had beautiful teachings. But what I think he was really saying is that heaven is on earth. Yeah. It's right here. We don't have to go somewhere. We have to create it here. That's the evolution of humanity. We have all the tools and all the resources to create heaven on earth right here.
When I was reading your book, I really thought that this is what Christ was describing. You have to pick up your cross and follow me. And where did he go but to death? And that's kind of what you described as this ego death that you went through. And then you were raised to this new life that was based on your inner consciousness and that peace that passes understanding and that joy unspeakable and all those things that don't make sense to us in our ego mind. So
to nuance it, I actually don't. I mean, I understand what the term ego death means, but, we can't live without an ego, right? Without an ego, there's no other. And so, we would just be walking through this world and we wouldn't see anything. We wouldn't have any understanding. Ego gives us this ability to relate to the outside world. Now, when the egoic mind is our master versus our heart, then we're in this rational world. And this is a world based on fear. Because, it comes from the lizard brain. The ego really can be a beautiful instrument when it's in service to our heart. And there's an intelligence in our heart. There's a Heart Math Institute that actually measured this. There's 40,000 neurons around your heart. There's a gut intelligence as well. Our mind is not our only center of intelligence. Our heart is connected to higher intelligence. So when you think about energy, and energy is light, and light is information. So everything in this world is just information. You are information. I am information, right? And so when we tap into our heart, we get access to this vast source of intuition. It comes in as intuition, as inspiration, as thoughts to some extent, when it doesn't come from our subconscious. And there's wisdom in this. This is an innate wisdom. This is a higher knowing.
I'm glad you made that distinction or added that nuance. You need your ego. You need that because it's almost the container. Or it could be that yin and yang, like you need a very feminine woman. If I don't add some structure and order to my life, I'm a disaster. I don't get anything done and I drop all the balls. So I need to plug into that. And sometimes the men I work with are so reliant on what they know and their knowledge and taking in new knowledge, they forget to drop down in their consciousness. So yeah, that working together and that dance is where it really is.
And the mind is really the fortress of the masculine, right? And the heart is the citadel of the feminine.
Right.
And so you're absolutely right. But, men are taught from a very early age. They're not initiated in matters of the heart.
Right. They're not.
It's all in the mind. The integration of the masculine and feminine, which energies we all have, is really an opening of the heart. You're absolutely right. That's where there's a huge disconnect. And what we see in the world today, the wars, the violence, the inequalities, the injustices, the hate, the pollution, that is only something you can create in the mind. Because in the mind, you can justify and rationalize these things. We need to make more profit. They're another color, so they're somehow less, or, they're just less sophisticated people, so we don't care about that, or, whatever it is. This is all rationalizations. The heart doesn't see it that way because the heart operates from unity. So when we integrate these two, we bring that feminine energy in balance with our masculine energy, we can still be very masculine. I've never had anybody tell me I'm very feminine. But, I talk about love and truth and compassion all day long because I think that's one of the things that the world needs far more of than our scientific religion that we have developed in this world.
Yes. Yes. It's that balance. And we've done to religion, we've masculinized religion. So we've taken the heart out of it and we just have a set of beliefs that if everybody goes along with, then you're morally correct and we give you a check. But it can turn into some really ugly things when the others, the ones that don't believe like we do, then we feel completely justified in hating them.
And we see this everywhere in the world today, right?
Yeah,
everywhere. There's protests all around the world. And so we have to be very careful how we perceive others and freedom, because there is such a thing as medical sovereignty and free will, and we have to respect those things.
Yeah.
That's a fundamental principle of just about any religion in the world, but truly, it's a fundamental principle of spirituality. It's the acknowledgement that we are responsible for ourselves, but we can't impose our will on others.
Yeah, definitely. I had a session with a coach the other day, and she said, "What is your number one value?" And I really had to think about it for a minute, but I came back with freedom, because without freedom, I can't pursue that inner, and without a freedom to speak it, I can't tell you what I've gone in the depths of my soul and discovered and bring it out. And it might be wrong, but that's when we can tweak it or add the nuance, right, like you did earlier. Without that freedom to say, then we're just going to go along with somebody's ideas and somebody's beliefs and have to all conform and be in a box.
Right.
Sounds like hell. To your point, heaven is possible.
Sure.
Where we're heading without freedom is a completely different thing.
But that's also an awakening event for humanity, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we really get to see and we really confront it. I think everybody within even their friendships, their marriages, their families, their close-knit friends. I mean, this is where all this washes to the surface. What do we really value as humanity, and how do we treat each other, and how do we coexist in a peaceful, graceful way, rather than making someone wrong and someone right.
Yeah.
And then have draconian measures for whoever happens to have the biggest club in their hand.
Yeah, and everyone is so against now, instead of focusing on what they're for. They focus on what they're against. And to your point, we pick up the club and beat somebody up who's different or other. I wanted to read something that you wrote. You said, Never Enoughitis, which is the title of your book, is the disease of our modern post-war society and culture of consumerism that can only be eradicated from within.
Yeah. So this Never Enoughitis came about because I talked about a lot of in the manuscript of my book. Mm-hmm. And actually the book had another title originally when I started writing it. And then my publisher said, "You talk so much about it, that's really the central theme of your book. And why don't you name your book that?" And what I really mean by that is that we seek our happiness, our joy in the outside world. And so when we seek it in a house, in a car, even in a relationship, or in anything else that's in the outside world, well, the outside world is very chaotic. It's very dynamic. None of that is stable. Yeah. None of that is really true, because, we had this dream of a certain car, and then we get it, and 2 months later, it's just a car. So now we need another fix. It's like dopamine. We need another shot of dopamine. The true happiness and joy that I at least found is when you don't attach to anything that happens in the outside world. Well, what does that mean? You're just happy whatever happens in your world? Well, truthfully, I'm human, but I can very quickly snap myself out of it and see the perspective that it will just change. Everything is always in perfect order. There's some reason this is showing up in my life. In some way, in my philosophy, I've created this because I am the creator of my own life. So in some way, I attracted this into my life. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. So then the powerful question always becomes, what is the lesson and gift in this? Even though it might suck, might be really bad, I've gone through near bankruptcy. I've lost most of my money in some of these, bad partners and hurricanes and things like that. And, these aren't fun things. And I'm not pretending that I've just smiled through it and I take it on the chin and nothing affects me. No, of course it affects me. But I ask more powerful questions now. And so I'm not a victim anymore. I take it as my responsibility because it's showing up in my life. And then the immediate questions I ask is, what's the gift in this? What lesson is in this? How am I growing and evolving from this? Because my goal in life has shifted. It's no longer just about making money or accumulating things or things like that. And I still do that too. I'm still active in the world. I'm still active in business. My real goal in life is how much can I evolve and grow. If I can find growth and evolution in failure, then it isn't a failure anymore. It's just another lesson. And really, when you start looking back through the rearview mirror, which is the only way you connect all the dots in life, and you go far enough back, you can almost see every failure in your life actually gave you something. If you're
Yes.
honestly, and the thing is to get the emotions out of the way, for a lot of people, you have to go 10, 20, 30 years back. There's still an emotional charge on these things. Now, the shorter you can make that refractionary period, right?
Yeah.
If you can make that a week or an hour, which is possible with practice, then life becomes a completely different journey because you're not carrying this for decades anymore. You're just moving past it. It doesn't mean that it doesn't happen to you. It still sucks. I still cry my eyes out when I have loved ones that are hurt or harmed or die. And none of those things like bring me joy. But I also have a way to shift how I
Mm-hmm.
look at it, how I perceive it. And it's all within the perception because it's never actually what happens because that's neutral. It's always in the perception, in the story, in the narrative around what happened, which we store as emotional baggage that we bring in our
Yeah.
lifetime.
You mentioned a challenge at the end to be a sacred king or to embody the sacred king. We talk a lot about archetypes and the king and the
Yeah, yeah.
warrior, but what you just described, it's like the buck stops here. I accept life as it is. I just receive it and work with it and see what I can learn from it. That's such a mature way of looking at it. And we all get caught up in the high chair tyrant where we're beating and throwing our food and pushing away people that love us because we don't want to accept what is. And just that mark of
Well,
maturity. Yeah.
when my self worth was tied to my business success, to my prestige, my accolades, how much money I had in the bank, to a certain
Mm-hmm.
extent, I didn't control that. Things happen. A hurricane wipes out your business and it wipes out millions of dollars. And it's like, I can't help a hurricane,
Yeah.
but, I can show up in a regal way and I can
Uh,
show up in integrity and I
yeah.
can show up with courage and strength. If you can look in the mirror at night, which I think every man should do, and answer the question, can I respect the man I see in the mirror? And when you tie it to those things and to love and compassion, no matter if people are shooting arrows at you, no matter if you have all kinds of people doing mean or horrible things to you, you can still do those things. Those are still within your power, no matter what situation you're in. That gives you the power. That gives you that fulfillment inside. Yeah, this wasn't a great day. Maybe I lost my job. But you know what? I still showed up. I worked on those things that are within my control. And only those inner things are in your control. It's what the money can't buy, right?
Yeah. What you described is that suffering that leads to glory. You put something in the book about allowing everything to be burned off that could be burned.
Yeah.
And then what
That,
remains is the
that's
real
it.
treasure.
That's a yogi prayer. It's one of my favorite ones. I was going through this disidentification. I saw my job, my business, my success, my house, my car. That was me. And
Mm-hmm.
without that, I had no value to myself. I was a loser. I was like a complete waste of space. Will you let me read it?
Yeah, I'd love for you to read
Because
it.
it's very deep, but it's one of my favorite
Yeah,
ones.
that'd be awesome.
So this is the third part of the book, which is Phoenix Rising, which is, I believe, sometimes things have to go to ashes so something more beautiful can arise from it. And that's the myth of the Phoenix Rising,
Yeah.
right? Yogi prayer goes like this: Lord, burn that which can be burned, drown that which can be drowned, and cut that which can be cut. For I want to know what it is that cannot be burned, cannot be drowned, and cannot be cut. This is your soul.
Mm.
I want to know my soul. Your soul is eternal. Your soul is infinite.
Yeah.
And that part within you, that is your true self. And that really the journey here is to become the observer And yeah, we go through these roller coasters and emotions, and we can be smart and we can be intelligent. We can learn a lot of things, but you really want to get to your soul. That's home,
Yeah.
right? The rest is just narratives from the mind. I mean, the whole egoic mind and the belief of self-belief is a psychological structure. It doesn't truly exist. And people ask me, well, your soul doesn't really exist. And I say, okay, you can argue that. I can't prove it mathematically.
Mm-hmm.
But I have journeyed far and wide enough in this lifetime that I'm pretty confident there is such a thing as a soul. And
Yeah.
even if there isn't, I prefer to be in that place than in this egoic mind space.
The
Where,
quality of your life and your
yes,
interactions with people and your connections and relationships are all so much deeper and
yes.
life-giving. I love that you brought up the part about being regal. You said that your mom told you that in the
Yeah,
book.
it's an old saying in Holland. It's an old saying. Like I said, I was born and raised in Holland, and my mom saw I was struggling. It was hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Epic fall from grace. Yeah, she reminded me in Dutch, but translated, just stay regal. That was such a big thing for me because it was actually something I could do,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I could choose to be regal, even when I had all the reasons in the world to feel that the world wasn't exactly being kind to me. And in some instances, people weren't necessarily being kind to me. And friends that I had supported and helped throughout the years were dropping like flies. And people that you hope would be there, suddenly you don't hear from them anymore.
Yeah.
But you can still say regal. And that was such a big lesson. And I'm so proud of my mom and she allowed me to just go through the suffering. She wasn't trying to rescue me or salvage me. She was just saying, just stay regal, stay true to yourself.
Yeah.
There's something at the end of this. There's a gift. There's a lesson. There's a superpower that you're
Mm-hmm.
awakening within this. And I truly believe all these things that happen to me doesn't make them feel any better, but I can see the purpose.
Yeah, you have so much great stuff. You ended with a bit about the masculine feminine relationship and
Yeah.
what you've learned there. And it's just so much of what I try to communicate to people, but I loved the way you packaged it coming from the masculine perspective and just the humility. And that example with your mom is just a great example of being open to her influence. And so you're this great, successful guy, you're doing these awesome things and you're out in the world.
Yeah.
And for a woman to come up and say, stay regal. Instead of just letting that bounce off your mind, you go, what do you mean, stay regal? I'm going through hell here. You like took her gift in and it really became like a lifeline for you in a way. So
yeah, and let me say something more. I mean, we can learn so much from nature. And these are the laws of nature. The lioness picks the lion. The lion doesn't crown himself. He becomes the lion of the pack because he's picked by the lioness. In old ancient wisdom traditions and indigenous cultures, traditionally the women crown the king. As men, we have to understand that the feminine is really the source of our power. She will inspire you in a constructive relationship, is a positive relationship. She will inspire you to heights that you cannot reach by yourself. Now, you will inspire her to go deeper into her femininity, go deeper into love and opening her heart, being vulnerable by showing up in a regal way and creating that environment where she can rely on you, where she can do that in safety and trust and protection. And there's a beautiful dance because in such a relationship, we can both evolve in our own different ways.
As a mother of boys, it's easy for me to see how all along I've been pushing them and telling them you can be better. That started from getting them out of my body. I pushed them out. I think if men could realize that's the nature of a relationship with the masculine and feminine, I mean, the tension will eventually start to build. And instead of taking it personally, it's like you're helping each other level up in that way.
Sure.
I want to read something you put toward the end of your book just to kind of close us out.
Please.
Here.
Yeah, do it.
People that listen to me, they know I'm talking about masculine, feminine dance at the level of your heart, at the level of your relationships, and on the level of the world. The very essence of masculinity, the way of the sacred king, is to live a life of integrity. Always be faithful, truthful, trustworthy, and impeccable with your words. The wounds you impart on your goddess's heart by not living these virtues might very well never heal. You will dim her flame and rob her of her divine radiance, and in turn, you will never be the man that you can be, as only in the luminosity of her full radiance can you become the highest version of yourself. Your power to leave a mark on this world rests within her love for you. For her, for you, for all of mankind, just love her. I love that.
Thank you. Thank you. I truly believe that's what I have come to find out in life. The secret fuel source of women is love. And we all need to be seen, heard, and loved. But for women, it's their fuel source. And if you retract your love, you have just closed her up. And it's not safe for her anymore to open up. It's not safe for her to share her world and understand. And you don't have to understand everything she says. Most of the time, she doesn't even need you to solve all her problems that she's sharing. She just wants you to know that she feels those problems, right? And our usual response is, well, that doesn't make any sense. And, I've done so many good things, and you're hammering on this one thing, and you're never talking about the 99 things that I did right. You're missing the point, because, she brings only those things up in the moments that she feels underloved. So if you care about her, well, the way out of this is to first love her more. And when a woman is fully in love, I mean, she is, first of all, insatiable. And second of all, she can't help but love you in ways that will stimulate and motivate and inspire you. She can't help herself. She's a walking love machine. She is built to love, period. Now, it's not that men don't love, but we, for instance, have much higher regard than women for respect. We really need to feel respected. So just love alone for a man is not enough. We want to feel respected. And so, we can understand these things between each other, these needs. And it doesn't mean that one is better than the other. We're wired differently. We're not the same. We're all in the soul consciousness the same. In this human incarnation, we're completely wired differently. We have different biology. We have different hormones. These are all facts.
And what comes first, the chicken or the egg? I think if you're in a relationship waiting on someone to respect you, or if you're in a relationship waiting for someone to love you, somebody has to give, right?
Well, and here I'm going to maybe go a little off script from what kind of modern society believes.
Yeah.
I think generally, if you want to be the man and you want to be leading, then for crying out, lead and go first. Now, that doesn't mean that you can just take any kind of abuse or have no boundaries. In fact, you should have a very, very firm boundaries, and you should have very firm limits that feel right to how you want to live your life. You express that, like, these are my boundaries. I don't want these boundaries to be crossed. A woman should have boundaries too, but you lead. Because if you want to be a leader, you got to go up front. You can't be a leader from behind. If you want to feel that masculine experience of leading, then lead. Go first. Make it safe for her.
I mean, that brings up a great point, which I truly believe. I guess I was being more politically correct in my...
I stopped doing that a long time ago.
It is so ingrained, but I do believe that. It's hard for me as a woman to say to men, though, that if you're waiting for respect, where in your life are the holes? Where are you not earning respect? Where are you forcing her to be a mother or whatever? And if you can start to lead in that area and change your life. And when I'm working with men one-on-one, I mean, we definitely are going there. You can only control you.
First, respect yourself.
Yeah, respect yourself.
And I think if you have low self-worth and you can't look at the guy in the mirror or what you do, or work on that first. Because how is someone else supposed to respect you or love you if you don't even love yourself, if you don't even respect yourself?
Yeah. Men have so much power as change agents. And when you can start to look at the mirror and identify a few things that you can do, and you start to change, systems start to change, then your family can start to change at that point.
I think women are incredibly powerful too, and they have a monumental role to play in where we're going as humanity, right? We're awakening, we're changing this world. It's slow and it's arduous, but women are awakening to their powers as well. There's major gifts that have been ignored by society or culture or religion that come from the feminine. And I think all those things will be more freely shared and be more freely available. And then I think men also, yeah, we can use our God-given gifts and superpowers also in beautiful ways and bring that into the world. And yeah, we need men to lead, and we need men to take control of their own lives and sort out their own shit.
Yeah.
Clean up the inner messes, because that's your responsibility. That's not hers. It's not your. Of course, maybe it came from your parents, but all change starts within. You want to change anything in your world, start changing it within.
Well, I appreciate you sharing your wisdom and
My pleasure.
spending this time. I really do. And I wondered if you could just tell people how they can find you on social media or your website.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, my audiobook is coming out.
Okay.
So it's any day now. So hopefully by the time this podcast broadcast, it will be out. That's Never Enoughitis. That's available on Amazon. The subtitle for that will be The Story About Getting What Money Can't Buy. Now, on my website, that's robertaltius.com, you will see the work that I do in terms of personal coaching as well as business advisory, because I work with companies on how to restructure them to become a force of good, kind of a roadmap. I'm very deeply involved in regenerative capitalism and some of the other things we can do to make this world a better place, a more thriving place. And our kids, they don't inherit a Mad Max movie. And then on Instagram, I'm at robertaltius.com. Same on Facebook. Publish on Medium, robertaltius.medium.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn as well. And anybody who wants to connect or follow me, I appreciate it.
Yeah. A lot of people write books, but I feel like this one really is well done. And I think it comes from a place of elder wisdom. If you're looking for the next step or if you want to level up, I think this would be a great investment of time and money.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate this invitation. I really enjoyed it.